Awesome. Cool. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back for our third installment of this program on the environment seminar series, Indigenous Perspectives on the Environment. I want to start today with the University of Washington official land acknowledgement. The University of Washington acknowledges the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. And we've talked a lot about land acknowledgements already, and I'd urge us to continue thinking about the meaning behind the acknowledgement itself and the process of engaging in a land acknowledgement such as this. And I was actually pretty interested, Jay, and you'll probably talk about this. I was looking at some of the traditional and custom fishing grounds of the Lummi Nation, and I realized that your waters actually extend quite a ways further south into some of the territories, perhaps of the tribes that I just mentioned, which I found quite interesting. And I imagine you might be able to fill in some perspective on this as well. But before we go there, I do want to introduce our speaker, Jeremiah Julius. He goes by J Julius. It's my great pleasure and honor to introduce Jay today. Jay is a fisherman, father, consultant, and proud Lummi Nation Tribal member. He has served for many years on Lummi Nation's council, and he recently stepped down as the chairman of that council. More recently, he founded and now leads the Sasila, the consulting firm that reintroduces indigenous spiritual law into the mainstream conversation about climate change and the environment, and facilitates strategies for integrating ancestral knowledge into policies over a broad range of different kinds of projects. He's also a board member of the Tribal Salmon Alliance and chief strategist of Children of the Setting Sun Productions, which maybe you can tell us more about as well. I had a little bit of opportunity to look into that and some of the movies and stories that you're producing through that production, the Children of the Setting Sun Productions. Jay was born and raised at Lummi Nation in Bellingham, Washington. He's a staunch advocate for the future of tribal youth and the health of the Salish Sea. And as a leader, Jay is known for his strategic thinking, bridge building, and the use of empathy and storytelling to bring people together. Jay's areas of experience and expertise include climate change, economic development, including tribal gaming, treaty rights, sovereignty issues, and Native American legal issues. He has worked at all levels of political organization, from the local to national. Among other things, Jay has overseen the launch of the Lummi Nation's Salish Sea campaign, sacredsea.org. He's helped lead the cleanup of the recent fish farm disaster in Bellingham Bay. And as you all know, he was deeply involved in the fight against the proposed coal port at Cherry Point. So yeah, it's hard to encapsulate Jay in a sort of a short introduction, but without further ado, please do welcome Jay Julius with a virtual round of applause. Thank you, Jay. The floor is yours.
Great. Well, man, that's an embarrassing introduction. Thank you, Tim. And as Tim mentioned, Sasila was founded recently, and it is a nonprofit organization, not a consulting firm, nonprofit called Sasila. And in our language, that means our grandmother. And really, for us and for me, as a Lactamish, a descendant of the late Dora Solomon, Nancy Solomon, traditional name Snina, our mothers are everything, and our grandmothers are everything. Not just for us who might be called indigenous, but I think all of us, because without our mothers, we cease to exist. And our mothers are the ultimate giver of life. And when I think of environment, when I think of earth, for us and in our teachings and the way we're brought up and the way it's always been, it is the ultimate giver of life. Um, it is our everything. And Tim, thank you. My name is J. Julius. My traditional names are Watatlam and Slailton. I am a tribal member, a fisherman, a father, and member of the Lummi Nation in Bellingham, Washington, or Bellingham is within Lummi Nation, however you want to label that. First, I think I want to share a story. I was asked, and I'm thankful and grateful for this opportunity to share on Indigenous perspectives on the environment. And with that, I have to begin with the story and maybe even share my perspectives around stories so others might be able to empathize with my philosophies that were instilled within and that we hold strong and still hold on to. But first, I ask a question to all of you. What is environment? What is the word environment? I know we'll go to Webster's dictionary. I went to Google and I looked it up and I put in what is environment. And Google says there's 3 types. There's physical environment, there's social environment, and there's culture environment. Indigenous perspectives on the environment. The definition, there's 2. One was the surroundings or conditions in which a person, animal, or plant lives and operates. The second is the natural world as a whole or in a particular geographical area, especially affected by human activity. I don't think I ever Googled environment until today, and I thought that was pretty interesting. But I would be curious to hear what people's definition or thoughts around environment are. And one of my biggest challenges, and I think all throughout this globe with Indigenous people, is the English language or the dominant language of that particular place. For us to share our philosophies and why things are so important to us becomes a challenge in our work and in our fights in our the education process to try to create empathy using English language because environment is broad. It is very broad. But let me share a story with you really quick. As I stated, I'm about 150, maybe 200 generation fisherman and farmer of the Salish Sea. We have farmed the Salish Sea and the rivers since the beginning of our time. And I'm not sure exactly, I think Western Washington has done the most studies at one of our village sites called Wichiakin. And many of you may know it as Cherry Point, which not too long ago was the proposal of the largest coal port in North America on or adjacent to our reservation. Originally, Cherry Point was within the boundaries of the Lummi Reservation and then later on shrunk following a treaty. But we still today are fishermen. And, but let's go back. I want to take you on a walk back in time for a moment to share with you a little bit about where I come from, who I am, and why I believe or live for what I live for, and why I celebrate survival every day. We were a people who occupied this land known as Whatcom County, San Juan Islands. And as I stated, we are a fishing people. We are a people who is a very tight-knit community. Family is everything. Community is everything. Everybody has a role, has a purpose. Everybody. We are a people who, when not fishing, we still today have ceremony. When there was, when the environment was at its purest, we fished for around 9 months a year. And then for 3 months, we had ceremony. We had gatherings. We had potlatches. We would come together with other communities, with other tribal nations from down south where you're at. We would come together through potlatches, through different places like Yakima, and we would go far. We would bring gifts, and we would attend these ceremonies and gatherings, and we would hold close our relationship through marriage and allies, because way back when, 200 generations ago, there still was great war. There still was conflict and differences. And for us here, it was mainly the Northerners, or it was the Northerners that we prepared for battle for. And that was kind of our reality back then. But 100, 200 generations ago, not only were we a tight-knit community, but we were one with. We were one with what the English word calls nature. We were nature. We were one with the orca. We fished side by side with them. We were one with the salmon. We gave ceremony every single year. When the first salmon would show up, we didn't go and just catch as much fish as we could. We held ceremony at every different village location. We may know it under the treaty as usual and accustomed grounds, but those particular places where we had reef net locations, a ceremony would take place, honoring, and today you may hear it, it's called the salmon ceremony, but those have been, those ceremonies had taken place for a long time, giving thanks. And once those ceremonies were complete, then the work began. Then the fishing side by side with the orcas began. And I think that for me is really important, because myself, I grew up with, I'm 46 years old. I was born in 1975. I grew up with my grandmother, Snina. Her name was Nancy Solomon. And I grew up with her mother also and father, who was Felix and Dora Solomon. Dora was from the Skagit tribe. Her maiden name was Williams. She spoke broken English. She was born in 1888, and she died when I was 5. And her husband, Felix, my great-grandfather, whose name I carry now, Watatlam, he was born in 1892. And I really want to share that to put into perspective. When I say I was one hug away from pre-contact, I was really one hug away from pre-contact. I was brought up by individuals who were raised by individuals who lived in a completely different world, a world where they debated, and they encouraged us to really understand that it wasn't true that when the newcomers got here, there was nothing. We had everything forever. The giver of life, the ultimate giver of life, we call Earth, we call Mother Nature, provided everything. Everything was pure. We drank from the streams, we drank from the rivers, we ate from the land, we harvested from the waters. No fish consumption rate was put in place in 1800, 1700, 1600, quantifying how much we could eat and couldn't eat before we get cancer, things like that. Our reality and their reality was they were one with. And that really, and those deep philosophies, and I'll share one quick story with you around my grandmother, who I now understand why it was important for her she was a courageous woman um, in her teaching ability, and I didn't understand it as a child, but I get it now because it came across sometimes harsh, but there was an urgency to teach. There was an urgency to hold on to that, maintaining that one with what we call nature, what we call environment, holding on to that oneness, that relatedness, that connection, the importance of the fact that she stressed that we all had spirits, and which led to you have to respect. You have to respect when you harvest. You have to respect when you walk in this area, when you walk this planet. Be respectful. Be respectful. One of the examples of was one day we're walking on the beach. Do you guys hear the echo?
Yeah, I do hear an echo. Sean, do you know what's happening here? I see someone's screen popping up. Maybe we can mute that person.
He's unmuted. I already muted them again.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry, Jay.
Right. No worries. So one of the most important teachings to me that I later came to realize what was a teaching opportunity for my grandmother, teaching in her unique way, was we're walking on the beach, and we did this often. And I'm 4, 5, maybe 6. I'm not sure exactly how old I was, but we're walking on the beach, and myself, I love sports. And as a little kid, I loved basketball. I loved baseball. I would take sticks and I'd hit rocks. And this one particular day, we're walking the beach, and my grandmother says, I threw a rock, and that rock hit another rock, and it split, and it made this buzzing noise. And my grandmother grabbed my shoulders and she said, "Shame on you. Shame on you. You leave my rocks alone. Don't you know they're alive? Did you hear that rock cry when you busted it and it split apart? Leave my rocks alone. Those are my rocks. Those are the Creator's rocks. Don't be breaking them. Don't you know they have spirits too?" And at the time, at a very young age, I thought, man, my grandma is so mean. So mean. But they had different teaching philosophies. And through life, my grandmother taught me in ways to be one with, to be respectful. And one of their most important things was the water was alive. Everything, we're connected to everything. And it's these philosophies on what we call environment, what we call earth, what we call nature. What I now understand and get is we have to maintain that one with. I'm not speaking and saying you have to, but I'm saying the philosophies passed down from an indigenous perspective and an indigenous grandmother was a common sense philosophy of we are one and everything is alive. And if we kill things and if we're not respectful, then in the end, we will pay the ultimate consequence. So it was that relatedness. It was that connection. It was that scratching my head and later on laughing at grandma. She thinks the rocks are alive, talking to my little cousins, man, she's crazy. She thinks the rocks are alive. They don't do nothing. But she would share with us that they hold the stories. They hold the footprints of your ancestors. They become one with you when your shoes are off and you're walking the beach where your ancestors have walked for thousands of years. And they know the songs. And the orca know because they have fished side by side with your family since the beginning. They have a respect for you, and it's our job too to have a respect for them. what happens to them inevitably happens to us, all of us, not no borders, boundaries, reservation boundaries, or nationality. There's no boundaries, there's no borders. It doesn't know. So what happens to everything else happens to us inevitably. It's common sense, she said. So these are some of the philosophies through life growing up, but I think what's most important is the generation, the generations. My son is 7th generation from a moment in time in 1855 when, Tim, your forefathers came together with my then leaders, and one an immigrant sovereign and one a sovereign of this land, of this territory. And together these two sovereigns entered into what is known under Article 6 of the United States Constitution as the supreme law of the land, a treaty. And this might be where your first environmental laws were ever put in place. Maybe, I don't know. But today, when you look at the statistics and the victories regarding environment, possibly, however one might look at it, a lot of them are centered around treaties and honoring a treaty. But our forefathers came together and entered into this bilateral agreement with one another, with an understanding that we would live together. And if you look at what the true sovereign of the land felt was extremely important at that time in 1855, it was usual and accustomed fishing grounds for us, a right to harvest, a right to hunt. We wanted to preserve that way of life, that Sjalangen. That is who we are. We ask ourselves a question right now through our nonprofit and through Indigenous Peoples Day. We brought together salmon people from California, Oregon, Canada, Washington, Idaho. And one of the main questions that brings us together is, who are you without salmon? Who are you without salmon? And for those of you here on this Zoom, it might not mean that much. Not a big deal if we have no salmon. But for us, for the indigenous, for the salmon people, it's like the orca. We cease to exist. And one might think, well, you'll still be here in human form. I mean, you'll be fine. You should be able to get over it, but it's deeper. It's tough to put into the English language. Only being 7 generations, 16 and a half decades ago, this binding contract was entered into between two sovereigns. But when you look back, what was important was holding on to that way of life, being that oneness, that relatedness, being connected to, being able to, the most important education that we still experience today as Lummi people, my children, is being on the water together. Where I'm connected with my father, who I lost when I was 7 years old, is not at his grave. It's on the water. It's where I spent my life with him from the age of 2 until the day he passed when I was 7. That was my most significant educational period with my father ever, in connection, in becoming one with. And that's where I'm still at 46. 39 years later, I am one with my father there. So it's really hard to put into words what our forefathers were thinking at the time in 1855. But I know this, it was important for them to create these environmental laws, our first laws, thinking about us, the 7th generation today. And really, when you look at, maybe Cherry Point, I was in leadership from 2011 to 2019, and Cherry Point now, that was a national known fight. I mean, it was a huge deal nationally. When we burned a mock check on the beach that September day in 2012, saying our treaty rights are not for sale, not even $1 billion could get us to support or allow this coal port to go through on our sacred lands. You know, that was I guess for us, so that particular day when we burnt a check was a day that New York Times saw, oh my gosh, this tribe is burning a check. Oh my gosh. You know, you see it on the front page of the New York Times, you see it on Wall Street Journal, you see it here. But really what most don't realize is that wasn't a day of burning a check. That was a day of honoring our ancestors. That's what that day was. That was the title of the day. Today, we come together with our elders, with the eldest within our community. She was 92 at the time. And we, today we honor our ancestors. We honor what they stood for. There may not be crosses, there may not be headstones where this proposal for a coal port is, but we hold sacred the grounds where our ancestors rest, the ancient ones rest. And, but in the end, all of that didn't matter. The most studied site in Whatcom County, the very first registered archaeological site in Whatcom County, all of that doesn't matter under federal law, under 106, under NEPA. It doesn't stop a project like it would in a city of Seattle if a big corporation was proposing development over crosses and headstones. There would be an uproar. But when it comes to tribes, this is our reality that we face today. It comes at the back end of an EIS process, and it doesn't carry any weight in the legal system. It's the treaty in the end that stopped a project like this. It was the fact, it was fishermen's declarations and the fact that tribal members fish still today and fished historically that stopped a proposal like that. Their mitigation measures for if this went through was to put a whole bunch of fill over the top of your family members and then construct the project over the top, and then they'll be fine. They'll be resting in peace. And that's kind of the reality. But I am going to leave some time for question and answer, but I first want to, with the Cherry Point and with many other battles that we've fought and tribes throughout this country fight, is I want to leave you with this. I want to make sure that you know that this is your treaty too. It's not an Indian thing. And I ask, what is honor? What does it mean to honor? What does it mean to honor an agreement? What does it mean to honor a mortgage with your bank when you go to buy your first house? When you buy a house, what does it mean to honor that agreement? What happens if you don't? What happens if one party violates? In this situation, I just want to encourage all of you and others that Indian treaties are not just Indian things. They're yours too. They're just as much yours as they are mine, and they go into forever. It's an agreement, and this country is built upon treaties. I believe there's 370 plus treaties in the United States. I think there's only 44 documented wars, and one can argue that they may not have even been wars, the most of them. So peace treaties this country is built on are your treaties too. And I think if we start thinking about that, and if we are in a environmental crisis, if we're in a witnessing a change in the environment, for us, our Stalangan is changing. We knew it was going to change, but what is at risk is our existence as a people, our existence as our relatedness and being one with. It's our way of life. And I eliminate the word climate. I eliminate the word environment. What might we replace it with if those two words didn't exist? And for me, I think it's, instead of environment, it's mother nature. And that, you know, in our nonprofit, my nonprofit is named after, it's our grandmother, the ultimate giver of life. Because I don't like to be labeled as a tree hugging environmentalist. It kind of gives a perception. I might be, but I don't think I am. I'm just one with. I'm just connected to. I'm just filled with these philosophies and teachings, and that we are the same. We are one with. We are not separate from. We did not accept a divorce from nature and become separate. We are still holding on to and believe that we are one with. And we believe that we cannot exist. Mother Nature can exist without us. We can't exist without Mother Nature. And climate, I replace with Stalangan, way of life. And I think we have to go back in time, many generations, all of us, not just Indigenous, but all of us, and invite ourselves back, I think, to, you know, what if? Because I asked myself the question, does the word environment eliminate spirit? Does the word environment make it less important? Does it eliminate the real significance and important it is, the connection to you, wherever you're from? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're all Indigenous from somewhere. At some point, a disconnect might have taken place. I'm not sure where, but I think we can all come back to the possibility of, or asking ourselves the question, can we exist? Can Mother Nature exist without us? Absolutely. And then as I dig deeper, some of you are working on green crab and different things. Well, what do we know green crab to be? Invasive species. Have I become the invasive species to this land, to this water, to this natural garden, to this giver of life? Have we as a whole? I'll take just as much responsibility if we have, but how do we move forward? How do we move forward and implement policies and teachings and create a change, if not for us, the unborn, the ones who, when they're here, might feel that they had a birthright to breathe, eat, drink, experience the natural way, this earth, the natural world, the natural law. So I'm going to leave it with that. An invitation back is always important for me. Not that it carries any weight, but even for myself and my children, you know, we have to invite ourselves back. Does nature have a right? Is nature real? What is environment? What is way of life? What is Stalangan? So thank you for letting me take you on a walk back in time and give a little bit of my Indigenous perspective and why I have the philosophies I have. It's important for me to carry on those philosophies that grandmothers, and great-grandmothers passed down. And thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit here today. Aishka.
Thank you so much, Jay, for that wonderful introduction to our conversation here. Yeah, you know, I'm really comfortable with however this conversation might go, and I think you've given us a lot of things to think about here, and you've certainly broadened and expanded our definition of environment, whether environment is even a useful term at all, as you imply. So, you know, maybe I'll just sort of follow up on the Cherry Point battle, if you will, for a little bit here. And you know, one thing I was struck with in reading more about the situation with the proposed coal terminal at Cherry Point was just the number of different groups that got involved in this fight. And I know that you're a bridge builder, and I was wondering if you could maybe talk more about some of the alliances that formed, and maybe they were unlikely alliances. I'm not sure. You have a better sense of all of the people that came together in opposition, and you know, and I guess the flip side of this also is you also alluded to the fact that there are some people who really don't seem to understand or uphold the Bolt decision, and you know, how these misunderstandings, I guess, arise, and also how these important legal decisions have, you know, served to maybe unify and bring some people together in ways that maybe were unexpected initially. And so maybe you can speak to that, and then I see Patrick Christie has his hand up here too, and Patrick, we'll get your question in a little bit, unless you want to clarify anything that I brought up here.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, the alliance is created, and for us, I think one of the most important things that we got out of this scary time in our lives, in my leadership, was the ability to tell the story, the ability to tell our story, the ability to, you know, because this technology, I mean, the fact that we're Zooming right now, and you're there and I'm here, but we're able to communicate with one another. You go back to 1968, 69, 1970, the times that led to the Bolt decision. We didn't have fax machines. We had a challenge communicating with the trustees of our treaty obligations in Washington, D.C. It wasn't as simple as now. Cantwell and Murray and you know, legislators and Obama and Trump and Biden, they're a phone call away. There's access now. We're not just on the menu, and treaty rights aren't just on the menu. We are now at the table, and we have an ability. So the Bolt decision, for example, back then and leading up, created a lot of turmoil and friction between state fishermen, sport fishermen, and tribes, and that's just a reality. But through the Cherry Point fight, when I went to school, still when I was in school in the late 80s and early 90s, it wasn't as common, but it wasn't uncommon for me to see one of the old bumper stickers that said "Kill an Indian, save a salmon." That was pretty normal, especially in the 80s, late 70s, and through the 80s. It was pretty common to see things like that and experience the anger. But one of the great alliances that I experienced was coming together with state fishermen, sport fishermen, and being at that event that I mentioned, honoring the ancestors. And I don't know if you've seen a picture from that moment in time, that particular day, but as I'm speaking on the beach, you could see behind me all these state fishing boats anchored up, standing with, came together as one for the same common purpose of hey, I've been a farmer of this sea for 4 generations, 3 generations, 6 generations. I've been a fisherman here, and that's important to us, and that's what the state represented, the state fishermen, and we came together and stood together, and for me that was an important moment in time to see that change take place, coming together as one, becoming friends, and that was an important alliance. And then environmental, NGOs and environmental organizations obviously came together, but you'll find that tribes are often resistant to becoming close with. Through history, there has become an absence of trust, because sometimes when it's convenient for or to stand with a tribe, it'll happen. But when it completely goes against treaty rights, there'll be opposition from NGOs regarding reserved rights from 16 decades ago. So, but it happened in this particular case, and the movement was unbelievable. And the unity and coming together and was amazing. But another thing for me was youth. Speaking at schools, being asked to speak at schools, and the youth movement on this particular situation, the coal port proposal, and the 6 in Washington State, was pretty amazing to hear the testimony and the stories from the young, incredible, courageous speakers speaking from the heart about their future and why this isn't good, why we have to shift directions. That was amazing for myself to experience through that 5-year battle.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Jay. Yeah, let's get Patrick's question here, and then I'd love to see some other hands raised if other questions come to mind after Patrick. Go ahead, Patrick.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for coming and educating us. It's really remarkable, and also very thankful to the Program on the Environment for hosting the speaker series. So, Mr. Julius, I'm Patrick. I'm a professor in the School of Marine and Environmental Affairs, as well as the Jackson School at the University of Washington. And I'm an environmental sociologist, if you will, and I'm currently teaching a course in environmental justice with a focus on treaty rights, tribal sovereignty, and the like. We have a lot of interest at the University of Washington, both by Indigenous and non-Indigenous students in matters of justice and things like the Bolt decision. So I just wanted to also say that I've had a little bit of experience. I co-taught a course up at Northwest Indians College at Lummi about 15 years ago. It's been a while, but we did interesting work with Lummi students and UW students. So I wanted to, the question that I have is this, is we're working on a project. There's some people on this call who have been involved in this project. We're using what is called digital storytelling. I notice I've been trolling you and your website for a while, looking at the important organization that you're a strategist for, and the idea of digital storytelling. We've been for the last year working with NOAA funds to engage Puyallup and youth, as well as University of Washington students, in telling stories around the Trans Mountain Expansion pipeline, creating stories about the Puyallup's resistance to LNG storage facility, the frack gas facility down in Tacoma. And so I just wanted to let you know about that. We're about to start a collaboration about Quileute and the estuary and restoration project near Tulalip. So my question, it's two parts. One is, what do you see as the future of use of social media to engage young people in storytelling, both people from Indigenous and non-Indigenous backgrounds? And I'm particularly interested in the collaboration between these type of people, like from different backgrounds, creating stories, putting them on the web. I would love to have the chance to share with you some of these stories. I'll send you an email or something with that. So the potential of raising awareness, participatory education, creating intercultural collaborations. And then the other thing I want to ask you a question about is, what do you see as the long-term possibilities for participate or meaningful institutional collaboration between the University of Washington and tribes? You know, we have a growing American Indian Studies program on campus. We have the Intellectual House. We have lots of students. We have lots of young non-Indigenous students who want to figure out how to be better allies, to work collaboratively. And so I'd love to hear some remarks that you might have about what would it need to happen for institutional collaboration between a place like UW and Lummi, Puyallup, Tulalip, or other institutions, Northwest Indians College. So social media potential and long-term collaboration, what's, from your perspective, what's necessary? And just thank you again. Sorry for going on and on.
Oh, no, absolutely. Thank you, Patrick. Well, I'm going to answer the second one first. UW, tribes, and I don't know if you're on earlier, but one of my great friends is dear friends and a man I respect so much, just got inducted into the UW Hall of Fame with football, and he's a U.S. history major. One of the things I think, and he and I, this is primarily our conversation, is around true history. True history here in Washington State, true history in Seattle. Who was Seattle? Has everyone in this environmental class read the words of Seattle and how it was translated and how he was a bridge builder and such an important bridge builder at the time of the treaty signing? But what did he talk to and express about environment? What did he maybe prophesy? What were some of his prophecies around environment and connection and being one with and ancestors and his fear for the future? One of the challenges I have faced from childhood to present, but I see a shift taking place, is the lack of understanding of true history. Who was Chief Seattle to the newcomers? Was it a great war? Because that's what John Wayne teaches. John Wayne films and different films and Indian wars, but that is not the truth. That is not the reality here. Hudson Bay did not go to war. The trading companies did not go to war with the tribes. Actually, the tribes were critical for the survival and of the newcomers. And there were relationships built. There were marriages that took place, and names still exist from some of the Hudson Bay traders that are big names here who came from Kentucky. I am a descendant of someone who came from Boston, who married a Lummi in mid 1800s, and you know, it's that important history needs to be taught, I think, at a deep level, so that we can understand one another, so that there is not a perception that that there are this false rights of conquest here, that we came together. What does a peace treaty mean? What does it mean when an immigrant sovereign and a sovereign come together and enter into a treaty? I think that's a major missing piece. And as I have this conversation with this individual here, you know, it's becoming a passion and something that's missing. He always mentions UW, phenomenal history, incredible school to attend to become a history major like himself. But as we asked him to do, you could watch a Treaty Day video on Children of the Setting Sun Productions. Jake actually came in a little late, and we did this in 2 days for the Ferndale School District, who declared January 22nd a holiday, acknowledging the importance of the treaty, and one of the first districts to do it, school districts. And Jake was important to because of his passion on history and understanding history, to be that so guards don't go up when this video was shared, and instant shutdown. So how do you bring balance into the conversation about history and true history and what a treaty is? I I think we're moving in that direction, not fast enough, I don't think, for the students here and my children, but I think it's moving pretty quick. And if I could recommend anything, really, what is true history? How much of it do we teach at UW? And what's important, I know the courses, you can only fit so much in, but how important is the creation of this place we call home, Washington State? What took place in order for this state to become a state? What took place in 1855, and then when did Washington become a state? Who was Governor Stevens of the Washington Territory? What did those negotiations look like? What are the truths there that should be taught in history? That way we can come together and I think honor both ends, because your forefathers are a signatory of the treaty and my forefathers are a signatory of the treaty. It's not an Indian thing. It's not an Indian treaty. It's a treaty where we came together as sovereigns, and this was the agreement. But Indian law makes it tough too, because Indian law isn't written to honor Indian treaties. It creates an extreme challenge. So that would be my recommendation is we, I think, have enough information based on the Fort Langley journals, based on journals kept from settlers and Hudson Bay employees and to tell the story, tell the history, the true history of how we became, and we weren't enemies. But there's kind of a perception that we are still today. And I think it's because of a failure to teach true history in the public schools, in the universities. And I think it's an easy fix. And I think it can help solve a lot of problems moving into the future for the future generations. Now, as far as social media goes, absolutely. I am anti, I think I have a LinkedIn account, but I do not have Facebook. I do not have any of that other stuff. I think I started a Twitter. I used to have Facebook, but never really engaged or got, because I just, I hold tight and I hold precious my relationship with my grandma and my grandpa and that time we spent together. And I never wanted to deprive my kids because of a computer screen, because of a phone screen, or an addiction to something fake. I want eye to eye. I want to be in person with all of you. I want my kids to be able to communicate in a way and not say things over a screen that you wouldn't say in person, but grow up in a way that you grew up. Those, Patrick and Tim, and cherish those moments on the ride to the parts store or the convenience store, or for me it was cleaning the net or picking up the yard or cutting the grass, or things like that. But I think social media and what we have now, the technology, another individual who has become a great friend of mine, who I respect a lot, but I had no respect for him when I met him. And the reason is we each did a TED Talk in 2014. And the TED Talk, it was called Our America. So someone called me and asked me if I would be willing to speak from the indigenous perspective. And then I was asked, what will the title of your TED Talk be? And I said, Sacred America. And my thought around this and what I was excited to get across was a walk 5,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, 3,000, 200, 100, what it once was, what it was like to wrap your arms around a tree and it took 10 individuals to do it. What does that mean? What was this place? What was this garden, this perfect garden? And this other individual talked about his excitement in 2014 about virtual reality and how UW can have a meeting with Jay Julius, and Jay Julius wouldn't have to be at UW, but he could actually be there at UW doing a presentation and a lecture on Indigenous perspectives on the environment. And I didn't like him, and he got to go before me. And he talked about his daughter, who was one at the time, who is a great, she's awesome. his son is awesome, Charlie. But he talked about how she's going to be able to go to a university when she is a college student, and she won't even have to go physically to the university. She'll be there in virtual reality. And he talked about this in 2014. And I thought, man, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. He's so lost in technology, and he's missing what we try to hold on to, and that's being together. That's being here in person, and that's being one. But for some reason, he reached out to me over the years, reached out to me. And then finally, we met. And he wanted to learn more about the land that he lived on. And he started one of the very first app games that you could get on a smartphone. And then he started some other app games that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. And then he sold the company, but he lived on and near one of our villages in the islands. And he constantly reached out about what the place used to be like, because he wanted to honor that. He wanted to bring that back. He wanted to respect that. Hey, am I doing this the right way? And the guy that I was upset with at the TED Talk soon became my friend, and he wanted to learn, okay, how do we get a message out? So I think social media and technology is the future. I think James Cameron did an incredible job of telling my story about Cherry Point in that movie Avatar. He told my story. And what was, I think, fascinating about the way James Cameron told my story in Avatar is he did it in such a way that these were alien creatures from another planet. And they had a sacred tree, and the US military was coming in and wanted that too, and explode, They told the Lakota Sioux story, Black Hills. He told the story of the Standing Rock Sioux. He told our story in such a way that we could all fall in love with the aliens. But that's my story. Frozen, Disney actually did a good job in Frozen 2 of telling my story, telling our story about the gift of the dams and its great energy. And we gave these Indians a gift. And so it's coming around, and I think technology, social media, and as we start to deprogram ourselves and learn more about true history, and maybe the fact that we were one with all of us, each and every one of us, and it's all of our future, and if not ours, it's our future generations' future. Because I think through technology, Patrick, I try to do this, and I try to draw 16 rectangles, and each rectangle indicates a decade. And when you look at 1855 from that perspective, not 165 years ago, because that was a long, long, long time ago. That was 6 generations from me. But like I said, I grew up with great grandma. 1888, she was born. Grandpa, 1892. They were raised by individuals before that. But if we put it into perspective through technology and look at how the time frames have collapsed, and when, for example, vinyl records employed 100,000 people here in this country for a long time, and then all of a sudden this thing put it out of business. I think it was cassette tapes, and then compact discs, and then MP3. And now most people who are students here have never even listened to a vinyl record, but when I was a kid, it was normal. So the time frames now collapse, and things happen much, much faster. And that's the future generation's reality. And the climate anxiety that these future generations and the younger generations feel today, Patrick and I and Tim and all of us who are from a different generation can say we can empathize and say we understand, but we will never feel what they feel. They're going to live here an extra 30, 40 years longer than us, and they're going to have to face the consequences of policies and decisions and things that we have put in place. So I think technology and social media through the youth's eyes can make a huge difference in telling their story in a good way to create empathy, to create that empathy needed to feel what they feel. because it's through technology, through film, through virtual reality that we can begin to see and feel things differently and have empathy. So I am hopeful. I am anti-social media. I am I like the in-person stuff, but I do see the value in it now. I really do see tremendous value going into the future. Sorry for dragging that on so long, but
no, it's beautiful. And I'm going to
I-
drop in the chat some links to some digital stories just for people if they're interested in checking them out about the Trans Mountain Pipeline and other ones. And I really super appreciate your perspective. And I misused the word before. I said trolling your website. I said following your website. Very different meanings. But anyway, I just want to thank you so much for your perspectives and hope to reach out. So thanks.
I'm going to look at these.
Yeah. Well, so it is 5:35, and I want to be respectful of your time, Jay. I think a few other folks may have questions for you. You should let us know if you need to go, but I guess I'd encourage everyone to thank Jay one more time here, and maybe if you do have a question for Jay, we can hang on a bit longer.
I will stick around as long as needed.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you again, Jay. This has been incredible and very enlightening. And yeah, I do look forward to continuing the conversation right now, but also hopefully at another date as well. And I'm going to let folks who have questions now ask them. I think Gary had his hand up, and maybe a few other folks do too.
I was going to actually first defer to any student who might have a question. People have been more silent than usual tonight. So really, does anybody want to chime in with a question before I go? Okay, you all had a chance. I get to ask it now. So it's, I study stories and I study language. And so what you say really resonates for me. And I guess two things I want to come back to. One, you began by talking about the difficulty of having to use English to articulate some of what you want to be able to say. That sort of attentiveness to linguistic difference, I think, is really important. What I kept hearing over and over, and I think you were doing it quite intentionally, was you're doing something very original with the English language. You're finding it a way for it to make it do some of the work you need it to do. The phrase "one with" is, what a linguist would call it a neologism, right? A new word, something made up. It's not a word that really exists in English. And you're using it to carve out a space that is different from what the word environment is likely to mean, right? To say something different and to reframe the way we think about and experience our contacts with nature. That's not a question so much as a comment. So the question was, I'd actually like to have you come back and talk a little bit about the word indigenous, which is another English language abstraction, right? It's like environment. It's a big word that encompasses a whole bunch of very different things. And to ask specifically whether you feel sort of any tension between that word and your identity as a member of the Lummi community and tribal nation.
Sure. Again, I don't give English a lot of weight. I don't take offense easily to the way things are delivered or said. Indigenous, I have a special relationship with orcas. Did I say that wrong? Or is it killer whale? Or is it blackfish? I don't know, but I'll tell you what it is. It's Quethalmachtin. I don't care what anybody calls it. I've been criticized. Oh, he called it an orca. Oh, he called it a killer whale. Oh, he called it a blackfish, or so-and-so called it this. Here's what it's called. Here's what Quethalmachtin is. It's Quethalmachtin. That's what it is. It's Quethalmachtin. And for some reason, Quethalmachtin and myself have had this unique ancient affair with one another still today, and it continues. My son and I go out to Snug Harbor, San Juan Island. We have a seafood market out there in the summertime, but we fish out there in the wintertime. And there's a podcast being done right now, and I got to listen to. They wanted me to review it, and the interviewer, I forgot all about this, but it's a normal day for me and my son. And my son's got this ancient affair with these eagles. And every year, it never fails. As soon as we pull into a particular place, they come and greet us. They talk to us. They fly side by side, these two. And they chirp, and my son whistles back in his eagle language. And it's just a normal thing. It's nothing, for us, it's not something, it's not like an awe moment. It's just a normal thing. And but this individual who's doing a book on a podcast around a love story about an orca was fascinated and blown away, and came to tears after the moment. And we're like, whoa, what's the big deal? But these relationships and this relatedness, it's real. It still exists. And my daughter and I went out to the seafood market over the summertime, and as we were leaving Bellingham, she says, I have not seen my spirit animal in so long. She's 23. And she goes, we're going to see him today. And sure enough, we get 25 miles out into Lopez Sound, and there's the whale watching boats. So we're like 700 yards away, and I shut off the engine. We can't even see them, but I shut off the engine. I go stand on the back deck, and it's just quiet. All you can hear is water against my boat, and what I found this amazing too, because it happens often. But the orca, the Quethalmachtin, beeline it for us. And my daughter, of course, it's never, you don't get to know them so much where you don't say, oh my God, because they're just such phenomenal, we call them people under the sea. I know that might sound crazy, but in our language, we have a way that we say that, but in the English language, we say relatives under the sea. They're ones that we have lived with and become to know one another for so many generations. And it's hard to even begin to fathom or understand. But they beelined it, and then these 5 came at us, and my daughter's sitting up on top of my cab of my boat. She's filming it, and of course she's saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Because it came from so far away, and they went right under the boat. They popped up right next to us first. I'm standing on the back. This one popped up, turned its head, looked at me, and my daughter films it go under my feet, and then she films the next one, and as it goes under the boat, it turns its head and it looks up at her. It's hard to put into words, but that's exactly it. That's the English language is tough, but what's got to be even tougher. I love, and there's nothing I'd rather been born other than a Lummi. I'm so blessed to be born a Lummi and born into the family I'm born into, because I have something and I hold on to, and it was so important for my parents and my grandparents and great grandparents to instill that in me, to make sure I held on to that connection, that relationship, that oneness with. I'm not sure why. But it's everything. It's the water. It's the streams. It's the river. Everything in my mind, whether right or wrong, is alive. And if it's alive, and if we have that ancient connection, it's worth fighting for. I don't remember. I'm sorry I rambled on. I don't remember what the question was, but Quethalmachtin, our language, we have our own words and it's hard to still, even though I'm 6 generations from, even though my great grandma, she spoke a little bit of English, but it was broken indigenous language. So to be indigenous, I don't take offense to that word, but I'm Lummi. And if you go to Yakima, they're Yakima. They're Yakima. I'm Lummi. I'm one with the orca, the Quattlemuchtan. I'm one with the salmon. I don't exist anymore without salmon. Period. I am no more. I am a lost soul. I'm a lost spirit. And I don't know how to put that into English words either. But to be indigenous is, I guess, what you said. It's nature is not something I go see on my 2 weeks off vacation. I'm one with every day. I am. I don't know if Sasquatch exists, you guys, but my great grandma used to feed him. and this may come out as a joke, and I'll tell it as a joke, but because my uncle, my Oksala, I went to dinner with him 2 nights ago. He's my Oksala, my teacher. That's how you say teacher, Oksala. But he's got this unique laugh that is just so fulfilling and gives you peace like a baby, you know. And he laughs and he chuckles and he giggles, and just out of the blue, we're not even talking about anything in particular, and he laughs and he giggles and he says, "Those silly people look for Bigfoot walking across roads, or they look under the trees." He goes, "Those silly people don't even realize they're tree people. They're tree people." And then he says, "You know, when I was a little kid, Grandma used to feed them. She'd put all the fish carcasses way up in the trees. We'd have to go way up there and feed them." But, you know, it's just, whether they're true or not, our philosophies and our ways of life, our Stalangan, that's what make us indigenous. And I think all of you are indigenous. I know you are. Where from? I don't know. I don't know if a separation took place or a disconnect, but I think environment takes away the deep importance of whatever environment is. I call her Mother Nature, the ultimate giver of life. I think we kind of, even through our school systems and as we teach our youth, we devalue it or make it, it's not that important, but and it's simple names, it's simple things, it's simple separations. So environment, nature, that's separate from us, but let's learn about it. Let's gain we have to respect it. But what if we in spirit are one with it? I don't care what religious beliefs, I'm not getting religious, I'm not talking about religion, but I'm just, I don't know how to exactly put it into words, but what if? What if somehow through education and through school systems, we were able to reignite and relight that fire of connection, relatedness, one with? Because when there's a oneness, then there's a respect, and there's not, we can sacrifice this at the expense of, you know, money, development, power.
I think despite what you've said, actually, you're awfully good at putting things into words over and over and finding ways to say things that are hard to get in touch with. Let me put it that way. And I would like actually to, on behalf of the program on the environment, thank you very much for being here today and to extend an open invitation. I would as much like to see you down here in person sometime to talk to us and our students as you would have preferred to be in person today. I think for all of us, COVID and pushing us online has been a loss, right? A tangible loss. So you have an open invitation when we're enough past COVID to make this really possible to come down and see us. I hope you do so.
Thank you.
Yeah. And, you know, I wish I'd said this earlier, but I do want to thank you also for your leadership on environmental issues in this region. And I know for you, everything you've described, it's Mother Nature, but at the same time, it's the leadership that you and Lummi have provided on these really critical issues, whether it's the coal terminal or this fish farm accident, and things to come, things here, this new pipeline proposal. It's just incredible what you're doing. And I think we're all of us in the environmental community, if I can use that term, are just incredibly grateful. And it's really amazing to me to see just how the tribes are using their treaty rights in this way, and the bold decision to be such strong leaders and so empowered on these issues. And to me, that's something remarkable. And I'm sure we could talk more about that, but I guess I just see tribes leading the way on so many of these really fundamental issues that are facing the environment. And I think we're deeply appreciative of that, and future generations obviously will be too. And so thank you. So it takes a lot of courage to stand up to these organizations, and you guys are out there doing it, on top of all of the other stresses that you face now and historically. So yeah, thank you so much.
I just want to say, is it Tia? Tia. And I can't see anyone else, students, but I am nothing special. My grandpa and my grandma, through example, if it's called courage, it was just through example. But I think through social media, online, technology, we can find courageous examples of work that we need to carry on to honor their work. It's not about me. It's not about Tim. It's not about Patrick and everyone else, especially our generation. It's about honoring the work that was done before us and carrying that on. And I'm just a kid from the reservation who loved sports and dreaded having to live at my grandma's, but now I value that. I really do. And I just encourage you guys to, it's through example that we get the courage. It's through an uncertainty of our future based on policies or actions or things like that give us the courage to creatively and fight the fights for future generations in a way where we don't beat people up so bad that they don't want to hear, or but we do it in try to do it in a charismatic way where people get where you're coming from, whatever that feeling is, or whatever's important or uncertain for you into the future. I just want to let you know that it's you. It's each and every one of you, whether small or big. We're all called to do something, and we never know and may never know the impact we have on little things that we do, speaking up for someone or something, and demanding honor for a treaty that is yours just as much as it is an Indian's. It's important. What does honor mean? So I just wanted to make sure. I can only see Tia and then all of us old people. But you guys, you are special, and it doesn't matter what environment you grow up in at home, whether you're poor or rich or whatever struggles. I think struggles make us stronger, in that uncertainty. And if there's a fear of the future, then that makes us stronger. And there's a lot of people who are with you to do whatever it is you want to do. Just take that step. And I encourage. I gain courage from encouragement from my grandma and my grandpa and my elders, and now my son and my daughters do the same. So I want to make sure I share with the students that it's you, no matter what, how big or how small, it is you. And it doesn't matter where you come from, where you are. Yeah.
And I think that, conversation about history too, and that, deep understanding you have of your own history as a people, the history of your family, and, the history of your non-human relatives as well. And I think is so important and maybe lost in a society that a more westernized society that's based around capitalism and, capitalistic principles that, are sometimes short-sighted, and I think it's this sort of deep sense of time arcing into the past and also into the future that I think is such a huge important part of the indigenous worldview that I think is missing even from our understanding of what environment is in a westernized context. And I think you really drove that home so well tonight. I hope I'm doing justice to your words, but again, thank you.
Can I ask you, Tia, are you a student at UW? Are you in program in the environment? Are you in the class? And I want to also, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm curious, is UW meeting your needs in terms of learning about these things and inspiring you? If you don't feel comfortable responding, I'm totally.
Oh yeah, no, it's all good. I am a student. This is my second year, so my first year was all online. But I'm loving it this year. I'm in Environment 250 with Tim. We just did a lab today, came back for this, and he told me about this. I did this seminar last year on environmental racism with Gary and a bunch of you guys too, which was really awesome. And I personally would say that in my experience at UW, I have been getting the resources that I've needed, like this seminar, along with the one I did last year, and just my classes in general have been really awesome. And just like hearing a lot of different perspectives. And I love that not only do I like hear perspectives in the classes and things, but then there are resources to like build on that in my own time, which has been really awesome. So I would say yes.
If I might just say, I mean, one of the things I'm also kind of curious. So if you want to reach out to me, you can. I'll drop my email in there. But we're doing this project on digital storytelling with Puyallup and Tulalip. We're working with Chief Lashai School down in Puyallup with teachers for the next year, and videography and oral history that will be done by Indigenous youth, by Puyallup youth. But it's really, I'm not a video maker, but I'm totally getting down with how young people are getting into this. And I think up at Puyallup as well. So anyway, I'm not trying to like hammer on this project. It's just that it's really about finding the right students at the UW who have your sensibilities, and be great to collaborate and find other students like you. So anyway, thanks for again. Cool.
Yeah, Patrick, this is great. I think I think we can all help promote the work you're doing, and I know that we would have some students interested in this, and I'm certainly interested to learn more myself. I've had similar ideas that I've been working on through. Actually, I teach a history course based on around the indigenous history of Seattle and this sort of greater Seattle area, and so. Yeah, that's been something I've been doing through the honors college, but I hope to make it a little bit more mainstream at the university. So, and I'm trained as a biologist, so you can see like I've through thinking about these kinds of issues, and especially thinking broadly within environmental studies, I've been drawn into these other important areas. So.
Okay, thank you so much. And Jay, I'm going to reach out to you and give you a call. I also want to chat with you about Northwest Indians College and potential collaborations there. So again, good to see you all. Really learned a lot.
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think I'm going to need to head home on my bike now. But yeah, should we? Yeah, we should probably wrap this up. Unless Tia, did you have a question, or were you okay? So yeah, thanks again, Jay. And I think Gary, you'll be in touch with Jay, right, about following up on the honorarium. So
follow up, and I really did mean that's an open invitation. And like I said, post-COVID, we're not doing any events on campus just because it's so problematic still, right? But we'll be past that, I hope, soon. And it would be great to have you come down and meet us and meet our students. We would love that. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been really fun, Jay. So we'll look forward to being in touch. And thank you so much again for sharing your time and wisdom with us. So
My pleasure. Thank
yeah.
you to everyone. Haishka.
Okay.